If you've ever tried to hit your protein goal while staying in a calorie deficit, I know it can sometimes feel impossible, but this episode is for you. I'm going to show you exactly how to do both at the same time so that you can actually build muscle and lose fat at the same time. All right, you guys, let's dive in. I wanted to record this episode because over the years, I've gotten a lot of questions on this specific topic, and just recently I got another question about it, so I wanted to cover it more in depth and more specifically, and so I'm excited. I'm going to kind of cover this topic in two different ways. Number one, I'm going to get deep into the numbers, and so if you have a pen or pencil out, then it would probably benefit you to write some numbers down as you're going throughout this process, because if this is something that you're actively trying to do and you actually want to get granular with it and you want to get numerical with it, then I would encourage you to do so, and I'm going to teach you how to do so. And then the second way I'm going to attack this is giving you specific strategies where it's like if you're not necessarily counting the numbers all that thoroughly, which is going to be a lot of you guys out there, then here are some things that you can focus on, and here are some things that you can do, and here are some specific proteins that you can eat that set you up for success so that you can more likely hit that protein goal while staying in a calorie deficit. So I'm going to cover it from those two different angles today. But before I do, I want to invite you guys to join us on the Best Year Retreat, January 8th through 11th, 2026. It's an hour west of Nashville. It's going to be an unbelievable time. If you want to kick off 2026 with more clarity and motivation than ever before about how you want to attack the calendar year to make it your best year yet, then come join us. We're going to have a group of about 16 of us, and you can sign up by going to nickcarrier.com/bestyouretreat. Would love to have you there. Okay, the way to start off today's episode is giving you context in terms of like why we want to hit a protein goal while being in a caloric deficit, and also why that can be a challenging thing, because it can be a challenging thing. So if somebody has the goal of losing weight, or let's say losing body fat, because that's really what you want to do, right? You want to lose body fat while gaining muscle or either maintaining muscle, but you don't want to be losing muscle. And so in order to lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit. That is a prerequisite for weight loss. That is a requirement for weight loss, being in a caloric deficit, meaning you are burning more calories than you are ingesting, than you are taking in. Now, when you are in a caloric deficit, it causes you to lose weight, but we want to preferentially lose body fat compared to muscle. Now, our body doesn't necessarily prefer to hold on to muscle over body fat, and so we have to try to convince it that it needs to hold on to muscle, that we want it to hold on to muscle, and that we only want it to lose body fat. Because when you're in a caloric deficit, your body just realizes that it is in an energy deficiency, and therefore it's trying to pull energy out of your body in any way that it can, whether that's body fat or muscle breakdown. And so we want to make sure we don't break down muscle. So in order to lose body fat and not muscle, you want to be not in an overly dramatic caloric deficit. You want to be about on a 200 to 600 calorie deficit per day. That's manageable, that's sustainable, that will make it so you're more likely to lose fat than muscle. And then there's also three other things that you can do to make sure that you bias for fat loss rather than muscle loss. The first is intaking appropriate amounts of protein, which is kind of the main reason why we're here today. And the appropriate amount of protein to maximize your ability to either gain muscle or maintain muscle is going to be 0.7 grams to 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight. That's the first thing. The second thing that you can do to make sure you bias for fat loss and not muscle loss is do resistance training at least 2 or more times a week. And then the third is going to be making sure that you intake carbohydrates, because carbs are also muscle sparing as well as protein. I actually did a really great podcast interview with a bodybuilding legend named Stan Efferding on how to melt body fat and build muscle. And so if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to have that video pop up right here, so you can click on it and watch that next, or save it for later to watch next. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'll have that video URL and that podcast URL linked in the show notes as well, so you can listen to Stan Efferding, because that was a great episode and we dove really deep into this topic and more. But today, I also want to really cover that first part, right? Like if you want to lose body fat, you want to be in a caloric deficit while intaking a sufficient amount of protein so that you maintain muscle. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I see in clients and people who have a fat loss goal is, me as a fitness trainer and nutrition coaches and people on social media or whatnot are big into harping on protein, and big on harping on really hitting that ideal target number is really important. However, sometimes that leads people to eradicating their caloric deficit. It leads them to actually eating too much, meaning maybe they're eating however many calories that they're burning or a little bit more. But so if you do that just for the sake of hitting your protein target, then you throw yourself out of caloric deficit, then you defeat the whole purpose. You defeat what you're trying to do in the first place, and you're not going to be able to lose body fat. And so calories is number one. Hitting your protein target is number two. Hitting your calories will allow you to lose weight. Hitting your protein target will allow you to lose body fat and not muscle. But you have to do step one before you do step two. If you do step two and eliminate your caloric deficit, then you're not going to lose body fat. And so we don't want to make that common mistake. Okay, let's get into the numbers. The first way I'm going to talk about this, like I said, is getting into the pure strategic numbers and get numerical. So I'm going to give you a example of calories and macronutrient targets. And so if you're not into the numbers, then this light is amazing. Okay, here we go. If you're not into the numbers, then you can maybe just hang on for 2 minutes. But if you are, take out a pen, pencil, piece of paper, whatever you do, and start taking some notes. So let's say your total daily energy expenditure, the number of calories that you burn on a daily basis, is 2,000. Okay, maybe you want to be in a 500 calorie deficit per day in order to lose body fat. So then you would have a calorie target of 1,500 calories per day as your goal. Now, let's say you're 150 pounds and you want to get to 140 pounds. And let's say your protein range, because your ideal body weight is 140 pounds, your ideal protein range would be 98 to 140 grams per day. But let's just round up. Let's go 100 to 140 grams per day. Now, that's how much protein you're trying to get. 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. So from 100 to 140 grams, that's going to be around 400 to 560 calories per day coming from protein. So I did 100 as the minimum intake, times 4 is 400, and then 140 times 4 is 560. So that would leave you around 940 to 1,100 calories left in your diet that can be consumed by carbs and fats. Now, let's kind of just go somewhere in the middle. So instead of 100 to 140, let's make it simple. Let's say 120 grams of protein is your daily protein target. And so 120 times 4 is going to be 480 calories that are going to be coming from protein. That essentially leaves you 1,020 calories that can come from carbs and fats combined. Now, let's say you want to get half of your calories from carbs and half of your calories from fats. That means you're going to have about 1,000 calories of them total, so about 500 from both. Stay with me if you're into the numbers. 500 calories from carbs is 500 divided by 4, which is 125 grams of carbohydrates. 500 calories of fat is 500 divided by 9, which is 55 grams of fat. So if you took that example, then your daily macronutrient goals would be 120 grams of protein, 125 grams of carbohydrates, and 55 grams of fat. Now, let me give you a quick overview of how to apply this if I was giving you a step-by-step process to figure this out for yourself. Number one, you would try to estimate your total daily energy expenditure, your TDEE. You can Google total daily energy expenditure calculator. Then you would put yourself in about a 500 calorie deficit, and that would be your total macronutrient goal. Once you know your total calorie goal, then put your ideal body weight and multiply that by 0.85. That's kind of the median amount of protein that you would want to intake on a daily basis. Once you get your ideal body weight times 0.85, that's the number of grams of protein that you would want to consume. Take the number of grams of protein you would want to consume, multiply that by 4, to get the total number of calories that you would be consuming from protein. Once you know the total number of calories that you would be consuming from protein, take that number, take your total calories from the day, subtract the number of calories from protein that you would be consuming, and then you're left with the number of calories that you would want to consume from carbohydrates and fats. Once you have that total number of calories from carbohydrates and fats, divide that number by 2. So you're going 50-50 from both. Once you have that divided by 2 number, take that, divide it by 4. That's the number of grams of carbs you should consume per day. And also take that number and divide it by 9. And that's the number of grams of fat that you should consume today. Now, if you followed along, great. If you're like, that was way too many numbers, we're past it. We're moving on. The next way I want to attack this is by giving you guys specific strategies, 5 different strategies that if you're like, I'm not into the numbers, I just need a few things to focus on in order to make this possible for me, in order to make sure that I stay in a caloric deficit while hitting my protein target. The first thing that you need to focus on is eating leaner proteins, meaning eating proteins that can have less grams of fat in them. Now, proteins with fat in them, that doesn't necessarily make them unhealthy. It just makes them more calorically dense. Like, for example, salmon is a protein source that is a fattier protein source. Very, 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 very healthy fats. You should be consuming salmon and other fatty fish, but it might be a little bit more caloric dense than something like chicken breast. And so if you're specifically during this period of time in your life when you're trying to hit a protein target and be in a caloric deficit, chicken breast might be something that you lean on more so than something like salmon. A few fats that are leaner in protein would be something like egg whites instead of eggs. So instead of maybe like 3 eggs that you have for breakfast, maybe you have 1 egg and some egg whites or something like that. Chicken breast, I already mentioned. And then when you're picking out something like your ground beef, then make sure it's 90-10, meaning 10% fat instead of something like 80-20 instead of 20% fat. Then if you're getting Greek yogurt, make sure it's fat-free. Greek yogurt, again, fat-free isn't necessarily healthier. It's just lower in calories. And then when you're getting protein powders, if you're using protein powders for shakes or mixing it and stuff, then make sure you get one that's lower in fat. Ground turkey is also a great option that's lower in fat. You can get 99% lean ground turkey. And then if you're talking about fish, again, salmon is a great thing that you can use in your diet and still fit into a diet when you're trying to hit a protein target while being in a caloric deficit. But a fish like cod is going to be lower in fat than a fish like salmon. So the first strategy is eating leaner proteins that have less fat content. Second strategy is don't be as liberal with your oils, your dressings, your butters, your mayos, and your toppings and things of that nature. Those are easier ways to cut back on calories, and those are also things that are usually higher in fat and therefore calorically dense, and therefore you can cut back on calories relatively quickly if you're not as liberal and you're more modest with things like oils, dressings, butters, mayos, and other toppings. A third strategy is to load up on vegetables. Vegetables are basically always low in calories, and they're very filling, and it takes a while to eat them. So like practically, if you have like a big plate of broccoli, let's say, like a huge, massive plate of broccoli, compared to a massive plate of potato chips, let's say, it's going to take a whole lot longer to eat the broccoli because you got to chew it and break it down and go through it. Whereas potato chips, like they go down like that. And so it's going to be, if you had a full plate, it's going to, of broccoli versus chips, it's going to take a lot longer to eat the broccoli. It's going to be a whole lot less in calories, and it's going to be a whole lot more filling. The chips are going to easily go down the pipe, be a lot higher in calories, and be a lot less filling. So loading up on veggies is great. Like I actually, when I was preparing for this episode, I had just consumed a dinner that had a chicken breast on it. That was probably about 6 ounces. And then a plate full of Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, and squash that Kennedy had made because we love plates of veggies. And so that's a great example of a big old helping of food, but lower in calories. Now, before I dive into the last two, I would love to encourage you to join the Best Year Retreat in January 8th to 11th. Look, this is for people who want to be as intentional in all areas of their life in 2026 as possible. Their health, personal, career, financial, spiritual, relational. If you feel like you're running around like you're like a chicken with its head cut off, then come join the Best Year Retreat from January 8th through 11th. You can sign up by going to nickcarrier.com/bestyearretreat. The last two strategies that I want to get practical with is number 4, don't snack. Now, snacking is not inherently bad, but snacking is an easy thing to cut out to minimize the amount of calories that you're consuming. So that's number 4. And number 5 is eliminate liquid calories as much as possible. Basically things like alcohol, things like sodas, try to cut back on those as much as possible. Those are easier ways, or somewhat easy ways, or at least for some of you guys, to reduce the total number of calories that you are intaking. So eat leaner proteins. Don't be as liberal with oils, dressings, etc. Load up on vegetables. Don't snack, and eliminate liquid calories as much as possible. Now look, if you're the type of person who's trying to stay in a caloric deficit while hitting your protein goal, you don't necessarily have to do all 5 of those things, but you could choose 2 or 3 of them to really dial in, and I guarantee you the likelihood that you're going to achieve that goal of caloric deficit, hitting your protein mark, is going to be a whole lot greater. Now, if you've stuck around this entire episode, I'm going to gift you guys with a prompt that you can copy and paste into ChatGPT. And this is going to actually give you numbers and give you a meal plan for 3 different days. So like literally what I want you to do is copy and paste what I have in the prompt, or what I have in the show notes. It'll be in the show notes for Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It'll be in the description for YouTube. If you use this prompt, it's going to give you 3 days of a meal plan, a unique breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 3 different days to actually help you hit your calorie and macro goals. Now, you do need to know 2 numbers. You need to know, number 1, how many calories you should consume per day. And we already talked about that. Get your total daily energy expenditure and subtract about 500 calories from that. And then you also need to know your daily protein intake. And to just go in the middle, I would say take your ideal body weight and multiply that by 0.85 grams. And it's the number of grams of protein. So there's a ChatGPT prompt that you can use. You just need to insert the number of calories per day that you would like to eat in order to lose body fat, and the number of grams of protein that you're looking to consume per day as well. Again, copy and paste that down below. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope you feel like you got something out of it. I hope this provided you more insight on how to achieve this goal of caloric deficit while hitting your protein targets, because that is such a critical combination to be able to do if you're really looking to optimize your body composition and you're really looking to lose fat in a healthy manner and lose weight in a healthy manner, I guess I should say, because you don't want to just lose a bunch of muscle and slow down your metabolism and lose your strength and all that kind of bad stuff. You want to make sure you're biasing your weight loss for body fat rather than muscle mass. And remember, if you would like to watch the episode that I did with Stan Efferding, or listen to the episode that I did with Stan Efferding, a bodybuilding legend, on YouTube, I'll have the video pop up again, how to melt fat and build muscle. If you're listening on the Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'll have it in the show notes down below as well. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you got something out of it. Make sure you share it with a friend or family member. But other than that, I hope you guys use this episode to get closer to your health and fitness goals, and ultimately to get you closer and closer to your best you.